Hey everybody, this one's a little different. It's not part of any of the series. I just wanted to step in and give a little fill in for the people following the story, um, and also reflect a little bit on the turns in my personal life. That's why this isn't, I kind of, yesterday I did part of the series and I kind of blended in some of the personal in it, and it was relevant because it was part of the story of the series, but um, I'm going to try and keep things separate. Like I'll notify, because again, people that are following, they want parts of the story. So, had an amazing day today. Great day. Went to church. Was a special service. We had a luncheon for the pastor afterwards. Great fellowship. Got to break bread with the congregation, which is one of my absolute favorite things about the church community is just coming together, in ways like that. And it's very um, uplifting, you know. And it gave me a chance to meet some people and get to know better some of the ones that I, met in the last couple weeks. My social circle is growing. Before I get too much into that, I need to back up. So last week I broke down and I I texted my ex and said, "Hey, I need you," to see if she would respond. She did, to her credit. That was my complaint before. Every time I would say I need you, she didn't show, and she did. And we first started to talk. And again, I did not um, sense any accountability, for the things that have been going wrong in this relationship. It's been rough for a while. And I was ready to let her go at that point. And my dumb ass fell for the love bomb. You know, she wanted to take a little deeper in conversation. Like, I'm dead serious. Within the first half hour, I think, of us talking, I was ready to let her walk out the door. Like, I even said as much. And that was when, everything kicked in. Like, oh, this is for real. I'm, going to lose this good supply. And I caved. I gave her everything I had that weekend. Um, Opened up. And all through the week, I tried to coach her. And at some point, she did confess that over the last 2 years, there's been some infidelity. That hurt, but it wasn't really a surprise, honestly. Whether it was physical intimacy or emotional intimacy, it was still she chose to step outside the relationship, and betrayal is betrayal. And again, my dumbass, my first thought was, oh, well, she's here. Here's my chance to, I can forgive that because I myself was in a rough place at the time, But no, there is no excuse for that. There's not. If she was that unhappy, she should have broke it off. But no, for years I've been telling her I felt like a safety net. I felt like, a backup plan. Um, and I was serious about I'm tired of being in a relationship that way. And again, after the love bombing, I was still gung ho. I said, all right, well, let's still do. I gave her the ring back. I said, let's do this. Let's start acting like, we want to be married. Taking this relationship a little more seriously. Fix things. And I tried to spend the week coaching her. There was still never any accountability. I never got honesty. I never got her to open up. Not the way I was opening up. And she couldn't even hide her contempt for me for a whole week. I talked to her last Saturday afternoon, and this past Saturday morning, she was already just openly hating me, openly disrespecting me. And that's when I realized, me chasing her, it really does make me an idiot. And thank God I woke up. Because if I'd pursued and married her, she had no intention of changing. She would continue to step out on the marriage, and then I would be stuck. So no, thank you. She wants to go be Thotimus Prime. She can roll on out. And that's how I feel. I'm done with it. I don't want her in my ear. I don't want her in my bed. And I do not want her in my life. I do not want her to touch me in any capacity ever again. And I'm very firm in that. And I think people are sensing that because in the last 48 hours, and this is where I was leading, in the last 48 hours, I've had not one but two people from my past that I had drifted away from to make her feel more secure. And they have reached out and not expecting anything, but they both commented that they, saw things were up and they were inquisitive. And I don't plan on, doing the narcissist move and monkey branching. But I'm also not going to look away from an opportunity to rebuild connections and friendships. I mean, obviously, if these are people that sat on the sidelines, respected my choice enough to step away while I was in a relationship, and approach me now that I'm available again, they're already worlds ahead of my ex who had 11 years in a ring. And that's just sad. I was saying yesterday, literally the bare minimum in human interaction from one person to another is acknowledgement. I see you, I hear you. Yes, you just spoke, I heard what you said, and I could not even get that from her. That is how self-absorbed and narcissistic she was. She likes to surround herself with people that enable that ideology, the ones that said, oh, well, he's never going to be good enough. Start looking somewhere else. Yeah, well, guess what? You listen to the wrong ones. And now you can stand on it. I am moving on. I already invited one of those friends to join me at church, sometime when they're available. And again, it's not the plan to pursue, but it's also the fact that I'm not closing the door. My initial plan was to take some time and heal, because narcissistic abuse does permanent damage to both brain damage and nervous system. They say it can take up to 2 years for you to re-regulate your nervous system. Fortunately, healing is my forte. I mean, that's kind of what this last week was, I'm sure you can compare my videos from last week to now. I was a mess because I felt like I had failed. And this past week was me giving her the opportunity to make the right choice and me to show myself that the failure wasn't mine. And I successfully did that. So I'm not going nuts anymore. I'm not going to sit here and beat myself up over it because I know I did my part and I did things right. And I did try to do the right thing. And it was rejected. And hey, that's cool. I do honestly forgive her for everything. I just do not want her in my life anymore. I don't harbor hate in my heart. I refuse to. It's not going to happen, but door shut, welded. She's not coming back. And enough damage has been done. And enough has held me back because it was like almost literally instantly the moment when we had that first argument a little over a month ago, almost instantly, the very next week, I was back in the church and I started these videos, which was all things that I had been wanting to do for years. They were part of me, and she had always talked me out of. She always kept me from my full potential because then it would interrupt the narrative. She needed people to believe that I was a mess, I was a wreck, and I wasn't thinking anything about the future. Even though she knows that that is not the case. But again, that is the narcissistic way. Yeah. And I had hoped, with all the skills and things that I developed, that I was going to be able to help. But again, you cannot help somebody who doesn't want change. If she had been willing to let go of that Jezebel spirit, that worldly lifestyle, I would have granted forgiveness. I would have moved forward with her. But like I said, in that week, she showed very clearly, like, she wasn't even thinking about change, let alone attempting it. All she was doing was taking all the knowledge and the coaching that I was giving her and using it to twist others. Like, she openly told me about it. I don't think she realized she was telling on herself, but she did. She did that a lot, told on herself, because again, narcissists think they're the smartest person in the room, but when you get an empath that pays attention, they know better. Just like her picking pool. I mean, granted, there was a lot of randos, but she also had a thing about picking out of my friendship pool. She didn't complain about friends around when she was attracted to them, but she complained about friends around when she wasn't. That was something else I picked up on that she told on herself that she didn't realize. Hell, one of them last weekend, when we heard on, one of them tried to stop in while she was here. Yeah, that's how toxic that was. I'm glad it's over. But yeah, so that door is shut, and the door is open for other relationships. And I don't mean romantic. I mean blossoming, flourishing friendships that actually enhance this experience we call life. I'm reconnecting. I'm opening doors, and I still refuse to harden my heart. I'm not going to let this experience stop me from putting all this love that I have in the world. Yeah, I gave it to the wrong one. Big deal. The right one will find me when the time comes. As long as I keep that door open. That's the trick. I can't let myself shut down. That's what I did before. I shut down, and I shut down everything. I completely became something that I hated. All in the name of making her happy, and it was never going to work. The more I tried, the less she respected me. And that in itself is extremely toxic. Like, if you're not interested in somebody, tell them. If there's not a chance of fixing it, tell them. Don't keep them around as a safety net. You want to go out and play the field, but don't keep coming back. Again, I wasn't a partner. I was a pet. I was a puppy. I got pet when she was happy and kicked when she wasn't. I'm over it. And yes, I'm giving this dead look right in the camera, like, because I know, again, there's going to be that gang stalking. They're wondering, oh, is there a chance? No, there isn't a chance. Again, not to be unforgiving. Forgiveness is granted. It's just the lesson has been learned. And again, I'm hard-headed, but it finally sank in. She finally showed me enough times her real face, what was under the mask. And I finally quit romanticizing the manipulation. I'm very thankful for the gifts that God has given me with my discernment, my intuition. And I know that God interceded, because I was ready to take that to the next level. And I would have just trapped myself. That's why God, let me see under the mask that day. That started all this. Anyway, enough of the unpleasant stuff. It felt good. I wrote a little thank you note to the pastor, for the occasion. And it felt good because it was I kind of got the same feeling from him that I had felt when he sent the note about the Bible studies that I had written. It made me feel good, and I was glad that I could, return that favor. Again, I'm very, very blessed to have this fellowship with this church. The people there are fantastic. And I'm finally around the right people. I'm finally around people that genuinely care and, want things for the well-being of others, the community. This is my tribe. I draw a certain type because of my personality. Again, I'm an empath. I'm a good supply to a narcissist. When I love, I love wholeheartedly. I dive right in. And that's not just romantic relationships, that's friendships too. And I've finally been taken advantage of enough that it's not going to happen anymore. But I'm hopeful. I finally have a position, in my life that I feel what I've been looking for years. I feel accepted. I feel I'm where I belong. I feel genuinely loved. Every time I walk into that church, I get some kind of compliment about, what I bring, and I appreciate that. It also makes me uncomfortable just because I'm so not used to that. And that's another eye-opening moment of how long has it been since not to say that I don't feel appreciated by my family here. I don't want to discount that. So if any of you are watching, please don't think. But again, that's the only real appreciation I've seen for years. And now it's right there. I know that I am worthy. Her narcissistic tactics to crush me, yeah, they worked at the time, but they wore off quick. I'm not that scared person anymore, and I refuse to live that way. I have my faith is my courage. God is my strength, and I have survived so much, and I'm still standing. I'm still here. I'm still unchanged by the world. There's too many people, like my ex, out there chasing worldly things, and I turn my back to them. And that has been, a superpower. I don't get caught up in the anxieties that everybody else does. That stuff doesn't concern me. And I know some people give me a funny look. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. I was up late last night, and I got full belly syndrome from that luncheon, so I know I yawn a lot in these, but usually I get the call to record these just before bed, so today at least I'm blessed to get it right in the middle of the afternoon. So yeah, I'm going to continue pursuing this, making videos, trying to help people, trying to guide them. I've also got a lot of writing. I want to pursue a couple work from home ideas that I had that I can do. I'm waiting to hear back from a couple places. So I am moving forward in life. I'm not letting these things hold me up. And some people can think I'm cold and callous for that, and that's fine. Again, I got God's approval. I don't need anybody else's. We only get so much time, and I have wasted enough. So I'm not letting my past hold me back anymore. I am stepping fully formed into my future, and I am embracing it with wide open arms. I'm not looking back anymore. You know, the story of Lot's wife, pillar of salt. Yeah, I'm not going to let this world harden me. Nope. So, anyway, for those that are, vested in the story, that's the update. That's where we're at, and that's where we're moving from. And again, to people out there, if you are looking for a positive connection, if you are looking for people that believe in faith, that believe in having an open heart, come look for me, because it's time to rebuild a new social circle. My only advice is be your authentic self. Be honest. Because my bullshit meter's like really, really, really honed in right now. And if you come to me looking for genuine growth and healing, I will help you in every way that I possibly can. But if you come to me to bullshit me, you're going to find out just how good my cutoff game is. Because let me tell you, it's pretty spectacular. She's finding that out right now. When I have had enough, I have had enough. Anywho, as usual, take care of yourself. Keep taking care of each other. And I'll see you in the next one.